Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
GSMC Soccer Podcast. Big welcome in. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. Jam-packed show today. Absolutely jam-packed. It's been a big week. For the first time in 65 years, Barcelona and Real Madrid lose on the same day of the Copa del Rey. And they are bounced early in the tournament. Absolute shocker, a stunner. I'll tell you why. It's not a big deal for Real Madrid, but it is a big deal for Barcelona. That may seem contradictory, but I have pretty good reasons for that. We'll get into that in just a second. Barcelona, just more and more quotes, more and more rumors, more and more arguing. It just seems like absolute chaos for one of the top leagues in the world. We'll discuss Barcelona more in depth. Also, FC Cincinnati, the most active team in Major League Soccer. They're following their Major League Baseball counterpart, the Cincinnati Reds, in being super active and spending some money in this offseason. And FC Cincinnati has gone from one of the worst teams the MLS has seen, only having 244 days before their expansion, into they might have a competent attack and they might be able to string something together in this MLS campaign. We'll dive into that. We'll dive a little more into the Major League Soccer format and how I'm starting to like this more and more, that they're leaning into the American way of doing things. There is a massive Bundesliga match on Sunday. The two teams at the top of the table, Bayern Munich and RB Leipzig, will do battle. We'll break that matchup down. We'll predict it. I've already given my prediction on past shows, but we'll go into more detailed reasons for that prediction for Bayern Munich versus RB Leipzig. And we'll end the show in the Bundesliga, but also the United States men's national team. Gio Reyna scored his first goal with Dortmund, and it was an absolute beauty of a goal. We'll discuss his potential future with the United States men's national team. That's the rundown for the day. That's the docket. Let's start. Barcelona and Real Madrid. Real Madrid goes down 4-3 in Copa del Rey, while Barcelona falls 1-0 to Athletic Bilbao. These two teams, obviously, normally heavy favorites in the Copa del Rey, the Spanish Cup, lose. Tough one. I watched the Real Madrid one. Real Madrid looked just kind of out of sorts, a little lackadaisical, looked like they could almost care less at points. And normally in matches like that, goals by worse competition usually just don't go in. You're a little lackadaisical, and you maybe get beat, 1-0, 2-1 maybe. You get beat close, and you just felt lackadaisical the whole time. But very seldom does a team jump all over you, because nearly every shot they take goes in. And that's exactly what happened in Real Madrid. The lackadaisical backfired. It bit them right in the butt. They fell behind, nearly made a comeback, but a 4-3 loss, tough to swallow. Meanwhile, Barcelona looked the exact same out of sorts that they looked in the previous round of the Copa del Rey, and like they've looked in La Liga. So if you're looking the same way week after week, I'm a little more worried about Barcelona after their loss, even though Real Madrid's came against a lesser opponent, because I've seen this happen to teams in cup performances before, what happened to Real Madrid. You're lackadaisical. The other team just is randomly clinical finishing today. That could be luck. That could be a whole confluence of things that happen to go against your luck that day. And in the sport of soccer, you don't have to be the better team to win. And sometimes the ball just needs to go in the net. And the ball went in the net. And Real Madrid paid for their lackadaisical play. And they got burned a bit. It happens. It happens all the time, especially in these cups. That's why they are exciting to a lot of people. That's why single elimination knockout tournaments are exciting. But Barcelona, it looked like the same out of sorts team that really didn't like their manager, like we've seen since they fired Valverde and moved on to Kiki Setien. And that's why I'm more worried about Barcelona than I am Real Madrid. Because here's the bottom line. Real Madrid is 3 points ahead in La Liga. Real Madrid has had the same manager all season long. Real Madrid believes in what they're doing. They're a little more consistent. I clearly trust the management and front office, if you will, of Real Madrid than I trust the management and front office of Barcelona, which has just spent the past couple of days, past couple of weeks, throwing their own players under the bus, trying to make excuses for a firing that many thought they shouldn't make, many thought they should make, and it's just been an absolute mess. And the mess has translated to the on-field product for Barcelona. I think Real Madrid's going to be fine. In fact, it might even be motivating for them that they lost this one. It'll allow them to refocus. They don't then have to play the Copa Del Rey matches, which might help them in the league. And it's one of those things that they as a team can take this loss on their back. While Barcelona is trying to point fingers at everybody else, all the players are pointing fingers at management. Some are pointing the fingers at the new manager. Some are pointing the fingers at the old manager. The management is pointing fingers at the players that they fired the old manager. And it just feels like an untenable situation. While Real Madrid, we as a team did not defend well today. We didn't defend well up front. We didn't defend well on our back line. We just were not a good unit. We did not play well together. We're going to get together. We're going to discuss it, and we'll be better next time. Those are two very different attitudes after losses. So you can read in the headline, Barcelona and Real Madrid both lose in Copa del Rey, and think that both these teams are sinking ships. And I think you'd be reading that headline a little bit wrong. I think there's one ship that's almost sunk already in terms of Barcelona sunk. Obviously, they're not going to get relegated or anything crazy. But it feels like they won't do much in La Liga and they won't do much in the Champions League. While one ship took a hard shot to the bow. And maybe that's a sign of things to come, but more likely than not, they'll get the leak fixed and keep sailing on. That's what I imagine will happen with Real Madrid and Zinedine Zidane and his boys. Because I've seen them be successful all year. And it was just one match, or lackadaisical, the other team finishes well. If they just had not finished as well, you could be talking about Real Madrid sneaking by with a victory. And you know what? It's not the headline that both Real Madrid and Barcelona lost on the same day. But I want to dive even deeper into this Barcelona situation because it's wild what's going on in Barcelona. And whatever is going on at Real Madrid, even if they lose a Copa del Rey match 4-3, it's certainly looking better than their arch rivals. And that's good for Zinedine Zidane because Barcelona made a premature firing, because Barcelona made a decision they probably shouldn't have made, because their management is in complete disarray. That gives Zinedine Zidane a little more cushion. It also makes his management a little more cautious in whether they should fire a manager or not. And it's going to give him a lot more room to breathe, a lot more room to operate. And I think those are only good things for Real Madrid moving forward in La Liga, in the Champions League. To me, even after watching Real Madrid lose 4-3, then watching Barcelona's performance made me feel even more comfortable with my prediction that I made, I think, 4 weeks ago when both Real Madrid and Barcelona were tied at 40 points at the top of the Liga, that Real Madrid was going to come away with this thing. And Barcelona, all they've done over the past 3-4 weeks is lean into the fact that it felt like they were in chaos. More stories have come out. The play on the field looks chaotic and unorganized, and it all just seems to be rolling right into a Real Madrid La Liga title. We'll see how far both these teams go in the Champions League, but it feels like Real Madrid is every day becoming the favorite, even if they lose 4-3 in Copa del Rey, which would normally not be the case, but the chaos of Barcelona allows that to happen. We'll dive more into the chaos on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast. Before we get to break, follow us on Twitter at GSMC_soccer. Like us on Facebook, GSMC Soccer, and follow all the other podcasts on the GSMC Podcast Network. On the other side of the break, we dive all the way into this Barcelona mess, how we got here, and where does Barcelona go from here. This is the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
GSMC Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. Give the show a follow on Twitter at GSMC_soccer. Like us on Facebook, GSMC Soccer. And this Barcelona thing is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. What all has transpired since the firing of Ernesto, Valverde. The bringing in of Kiki Setien, who had one of the most interesting quotes I've ever seen from a manager that is flailing in the midst of a chaotic fire of an organization, which is, I think we've taken steps forward since my hiring. Really now? Really? Because when you got hired, you were tied to the top of the Liga, and you were still in the Copa del Rey, and there was no chance Lionel Messi was ever going to be transferred anywhere. And now you're 3 points back of Real Madrid. You're out of the Copa del Rey. And I'm reading transfer rumors about Lionel Messi because he hates the organization and everything that's transpired with it. And I've watched you play on the field. I don't think you've taken a single step forward, let alone steps. What steps have you taken forward? Are you possessing the ball more? I mean, perhaps by the numbers, but it isn't translating any success on the field. It's aimless possession. It's like a bad high school team trying to copy tiki-taka. Like a coach that doesn't really understand what valuable possession is. Just like, pass it around the back and, keep possession. That's important. It's got to be possession with a purpose. It has to be possession with a purpose. And yes, sometimes it'll look aimless. But it's possession to move your shape into different areas and then set up attacking runs. You can't just possess for possession's sake. And I just saw that quote from Kiki Setien, and it reemphasized the fact to me that Barcelona truly has no idea what they're doing. None. The management said that the players are the ones that wanted Valverde fired. And then players came out and said, we never said that. And I'm sure some of them actually did say that to management. But the thing is, to management, don't listen to your players. You make that decision. Right? And just following your whims of your players at every turn, just because you pay them a lot of money, is not a good idea. And like I said, when you fire your manager, at least look at the standings and just, because to me, you were in every competition still. You were tied to the top of La Liga, round of 16 of the Champions League, still in the Copa del Rey. And yeah, maybe you fire the manager, you bring in a guy that exposes those old Barcelona values where we pass the ball around and we play that tiki-taka Barcelona style. And yeah, you can lean into that idea all you want. But it's a risk. You can alienate half the locker room. You can alienate everybody. This guy can come in and completely screw up everything. It's exactly what happened. It wasn't a situation in Barcelona that he needed to be fired then. It wasn't a situation where him being fired was what needed to happen. And all the evidence over the past couple of weeks supports that fact. And then you come out in the press and you throw your players right under the bus trying to say it was their fault, which is just horrendous to do as any sort of boss or manager. And now the players hate you and then hate the manager for hiring him. right? So they hate the manager because you hired the manager, and they hate you because you're throwing him under the bus. And a former player of Barcelona came out today, close friend Lionel Messi, and, he used an expletive. He's like, we got to stop throwing crap at each other. We're Barcelona. We should be a team. We should be one unit. And like I said about Real Madrid they lost 4-3, but they lost as a team. They'll try to fix the issues as a team. And in Barcelona, if Lionel Messi leaves, I'm not sure what they're going to do moving forward, because these are some serious fundamental issues with their organization. I don't know why you're disrespecting Messi here either. He is the only thing keeping you afloat. If you lose Lionel Messi, your star, the only guy that makes them competent at moments, the only guy that can drag them to some victories and make them competitive in competitions like the Champions League, make them competitive against even teams like Atletico Madrid or Sevilla at the top of the league, it's Lionel Messi. Add in the fact he's the most famous player your club has ever had, and a large reason for your guys' major success in the 2000s, and you'd be absolutely insane to do anything to upset Lionel Messi. And throwing him under the bus for the firing is not the way to go at all. I mean, this is management malpractice from Barcelona. And all these reasons just make me think that they're just going to keep falling right off the table. They're going to keep taking steps backwards because that's what they've done since Quique Setien's took over. And I really think we're just a couple months away when this season is over for Barcelona having an early exit of the Champions League, losing out on La Liga, maybe even finishing third, losing out early in the Copa Del Rey, which is already what happened, firing their manager that they hired to replace the old guy anyway, firing their front office, and then starting from scratch and possibly selling Lionel Messi. And that is a bad, bad, bad place to be if you're an organization. That's Barcelona that had Neymar, right? That had this super team. And just rough to see, rough to watch if you're a fan of Barcelona. If you're a fan of Real Madrid or anybody else that didn't like Barcelona over the last 10 years, might be a good thing to see. And boy, wouldn't it be interesting if Lionel Messi played somewhere else. Now, where do I think he'd go? I think he still has the opportunity to play in a league like the Premier League. And I'd love to see Messi in the Premier League. I think he'd be fantastic there. I think he'd make a lot of headlines. I'm not sure who he'd play for. I'm not sure who would want to spend that type of money. But I would hate to see like Juventus or PSG or Bayern Munich or somebody like that buy him. I don't think Messi's in their plans whatsoever. Just because I want to see him in a competitive league week in, week out. But you know what? If you're Messi, go follow Ronaldo to Italy. Find a Serie A team to compete with him. Go to Inter or something, right? AC Milan maybe joins Zlatan. Something crazy. These are just rumors. Not even rumors. These are just speculation ideas I'm throwing out there. But the fact we're even at this point is a shame for Barcelona and its organization malpractice. Now, an organization that I think went through some organization malpractice midway through last year in the MLS, FC Cincinnati, they fired a manager and then continued to tailspin all the way into a ball of fire at the end of the season, which was one of the worst MLS campaigns we've ever seen from FC Cincinnati. Well, their organization has made the proper corrections, and I think they are moving in the proper direction. We'll discuss that on the other side of the break. Before we go to break, though, follow us on Twitter at GSMC_soccer. Like us on Facebook, GSMC Soccer. It's important you like us there. You can find all the episodes, some clips as well. We'll head to break. On the other side, FC Cincinnati, some MLS talk coming your way. This is the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
GSMC Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. Big welcome into the show. Follow us on Twitter at GSMC_soccer. Like us on Facebook, GSMC Soccer. And let's go ahead and dive right into the MLS and FC Cincinnati. Now, last season was one of the most interesting campaigns in MLS history, I think, of what FC Cincinnati went through. Obviously, FC Cincinnati was never in any sort of long-term plans for the MLS. They did not think Cincinnati was a large enough media market to put a sports team into, that they wanted large media markets in the MLS. And there was a lot of competing sports teams in the city already, as in two, plus a hockey team, a minor league hockey team. And it just felt like a place that the MLS never long-term thought about putting an MLS team in. And then somebody in Cincinnati tried it. They did FC Cincinnati in the minor leagues. It immediately caught on. They start setting attendance records. And then FC Cincinnati has one magical run to the U.S. Open Cup semifinals. And they fill stadiums. They pull upsets. They have fans marching a mile, buying uniforms, demanding that the team be placed into Major League Soccer. It was truly one of the best stories I've ever seen in terms of fandom, support, love, transferring a team into a major sports league. FC Cincinnati is solely reliant on the fan support for the reason they're in the MLS. There really was no other reason. They did not have a stadium completed. They're in a small media market. It made about 0 sense in the world outside of this team is going to get a lot of support, a lot of fans. And look, Cincinnati is so close to Columbus. Hour-and-a-half drive. There's another soccer team already there in the MLS, right? There's no reason to do that other than the fans. Now, MLS rushed it a bit. They pushed FC Cincinnati in because they wanted to capitalize on that fan support. Only gave FC Cincinnati 244 days between finding out they were going to join MLS and the start of their first MLS campaign. That makes it very difficult to cobble together a good roster. Now, I thought FC Cincinnati did a valiant job with the time in which they had. They had their old manager, Alan Koch. He stayed aboard because it was obviously easier. There were a lot of players from the minor leagues of American soccer that stuck on the roster, and it ended up being an absolute disaster. Now, they had a decent start. They rode the momentum. They had some good home crowds. They had great crowds all year. But they fire Alan Koch after 7 straight scoreless games. And then Yohan Demay, a younger guy, one of the youngest managers that's been seen in world soccer, he took over the team and they went into an absolute tailspin. It was horrendous. They were in 12th place for nearly the whole year, league record in goals allowed for a team that was supposed to be built on their defense, and it all just fell apart. Now, I don't think they should have fired Alan Koch. I think he was getting to play competent enough that FC Cincinnati would have had much better performances, would not have given up that amount of goals throughout the season. I think they would have cobbled it all together. But Alan Koch, I don't think, was the long-term answer either. So, in hindsight, I can't really be screaming at the top of my lungs about the firing. I just don't think he was the guy that was going to eventually carry FC Cincinnati to the place where FC Cincinnati wants to go, which is obviously the top of Major League Soccer. And in a league that's getting highly competitive, so much more money is flowing in, so many teams are spending a lot of money, so many teams are entering the league to where the talent is getting dispersed, to where you need to spend money to have your talent. It's going to be very difficult. So you got to start swinging. And Alan Koch was not going to be the answer, and I fully understand that. Maybe Ron Jans is. So they hire this Dutch manager at the end of the year, Ron Jans, who's led some really interesting clubs in the Netherlands. He was famous for pulling underdogs from bottom up. He's won more games than he's lost in his career. He has a 40% winning percentage because you have all the draws mixed in, but I consider that above 500 if you've won more than you've lost. A draw is a draw. You do get a point out of that. And if SC Cincinnati just had more draws last year, maybe they'd have been a little bit more competitive. And obviously he's a guy that runs a 4-3-3. Don't count his record at the end of the year. He was just getting established. You bring in a general manager, Gerard Nijkamp, who'd worked with this manager, Ron Jans, throughout the Netherlands, throughout all these places. And it feels like they have a plan, at least moving forward. They said they had a plan, and now they've executed it. They bought in 3 attacking players to add to that goal-scoring identity that a lot of great MLS teams have. There are only 8 players. We're only 8 players in the MLS that had a transfer market value of more than $10 million. Right? The 2 Los Angeles teams had quite a few of them, and Atlanta had them. Just 3 teams. Now FC Cincinnati has the next one, Jürgen Locadia. And Locadia had spent time in the Premier League, spent time in the Bundesliga. He's a guy that was always going to be a low-level goal scorer off the bench, a guy who can put it in the net in those leagues, but not consistently enough to ever make big money, but a guy that you would love to have come off the bench, and low-level teams that are trying to make their way, keep their way in the Premier League, or go from the championship to promotion, he would be their frontline goal scorer, pocket 11 or 12 a year. That was probably going to be his role in Europe. Instead, he comes over in his prime, which I think is a great move for him, to a team that is going to utilize him a lot, and to a place in a league where he can score a lot of goals. Because the defense in Major League Soccer just is not the same as the Premier League or the Bundesliga. And he's got this killer instinct. He's the perfect fit, Jürgen Locadia, in a 4-3-3 setup, which is exactly what Ron Jans would like to run with FC Cincinnati. And then you add in Yuya Kobo, who can play both on the wings, can be that center attacking mid in a 4-3-3. And then you add Regatten, who's another attacking player. And all these 3 are designated players. They're big transfers. They're solid players. And this roster for FC Cincinnati is much better than what they had last year, at least up front. And you got to solidify some things on defense, and they are nowhere close to me to being an LAFC, to being an LA Galaxy, to being Atlanta United, to being one of the top teams in the league. But they certainly can get in the playoffs. And the great thing about Major League Soccer is it is not like the Premier League. Right? In the Premier League, if you say, well, we're not Liverpool, we're not Manchester City, right? We're not Chelsea, we're not one of those top teams, but, there is no but, There's no, well, if this happens, maybe we can win a championship, because you have to be better than them. You have to be better than those teams all year long. But in the MLS and in all American sports, if you can make the playoffs, anything can happen. Anything can happen. And FC Cincinnati has put themselves into a position where if the manager figures it out, players buy in, and the 3 signings work out about as you expect, not even above expectations, but about as you expect, they could certainly be a team that makes their way into the MLS playoffs this year. And that is probably should be the goal for FC Cincinnati. Make the playoffs. That's it. Don't have to be one of the top teams. Make the playoffs. Keep fan interest. Gain funds. Be interesting. Score some goals. Make the playoffs. See what you can do. And you know what? If you do something in the playoffs, it's going to be a lot of fun. Fans will show up. You'll be excited about it. And you certainly won't regret those signings. And then you can turn those signings into more signings, keep building your roster, build your youth academy, start to add guys through the super draft. I like Frankie Amaya. And you can really start to build out a roster. We'll see if FC Cincinnati is on the right direction, on the right path. I'm glad that Jeff Birding gave up player control and roster control to Gerard Nijkamp. That was a good decision by him. And I just feel like that FC Cincinnati seems to be moving in the right direction, which is good for MLS because they're a team that is going to have a lot of fans. You want those clubs with a lot of fans to keep that fan support. And the best way to keep it is to win games and to be successful. On the other side of the break, we'll keep talking about Major League Soccer, how I used to be against this American-style format expanding the league out to 30 and making it more like Major League Baseball, National Football League, NHL, and the NBA. I used to be against that. I'll tell you why I'm for that strategy for Major League Soccer on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
GSMC Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. Big welcome back into the program. Boy, Major League Soccer used to be a pretty easy league to predict. Used to only be like 10, 15 teams. You get them all figured out, and you could kind of rank them pretty quickly. And it's just going to be about impossible this season. Because it's a combination of a lot of things. It has the size of leagues that are already hard to predict in American sports like the NFL, NBA, which are so hard to get predictions right year after year, Major League Baseball. Why? Because there's a lot of teams, there's a lot of roster variability, there's a lot of competitive cities, there's a lot of money that goes into it. And when the margin is that tight, things can flip and change, and teams can get better or worse. And I think Major League Soccer might be easy to predict at the top of the league. I think you're going to be able to nail about the top 3 or 4 teams. But from that point on, it's going to be super hard to predict because there are so many teams, and an add in the fact there's expansion teams, there's whole new rosters, whole new way of doing things. You're not sure how organizations react. I think that this edition of Major League Soccer, the next about 3 or 4, when they keep expanding the league, will be damn near impossible to predict, even by prediction websites, even by projection models, even by the most ardent MLS experts. It's going to be really hard to get a true feel of how the league is and where it's going in terms of where the teams rank. It's going to be a lot of surprises, a lot of, I don't really know how this guy fits into the MLS, because also you have this thing of what is the quality of the MLS? So it used to be you bring in a guy of this quality from this league, and you knew where the MLS stood in comparison to it, and you could translate his performance over. But now, I mean, MLS, you have teams in the top 100 clubs in the world, you have teams down in the bottom 3. It's just a league with a lot of variability. It's a league that's hard to pin exactly where it stands in the world. So just because a guy was an all-right striker at the bottom half of the Bundesliga doesn't mean he's going to be an elite player here anymore. Used to be the case, no longer is. Why? There's a lot of talented players in the MLS. The league is better. And now all I've said is a good thing. It's a great thing. It's good, it's hard to predict. It's good there's more cities involved. It's good there's a lot more talented players, meaning it's harder to gauge future performance from other players who have played in other leagues. It's all good things. I used to be a guy that said, hey, listen, the MLS needs to operate like a European soccer league. Look how well it's worked for them. You know, Premier League, Bundesliga, you need to do the table. You need to do just qualify, whatever, no playoffs, scratch that. It's not the way soccer's meant to be. Do promotion and relegation. And the more I've thought about it, and the more I've seen the way MLS is executing this, the more I'm against that belief. I'm actually loving what MLS is doing, because you have a real crossroads here. You can either be a 20-team league like the rest of the world and say, listen, there's going to be promotion and relegation, but we're just going to keep to 20 teams. It helps soccer operate better. We're going to have a regular schedule. It seems to work for the leagues in Europe, so that's what we're going to do here. But the MLS, and I think smartly, has decided that this is the United States. And how do sports leagues work in the United States? What's successful in the United States? Larger leagues, a lot of teams, a lot of cities involved, parity, and playoffs. People like teams that go from last to first. They love it in the United States. I think they would love it elsewhere in the world. They just don't have that model. They don't have that system. They've never seen it. I've always said to my relatives in Germany that if the Bundesliga said, okay, here's what we're going to do. The top 4 teams play in a single elimination tournament at the end of the year. It'd be incredibly popular. It'd be amazing. It'd be fun to watch, and you're just worried about getting the top 4. And the traditionalists over there and all of them say, oh, no, that's not how it works. You pick a champion, you have a champion. That's how you do it. Yeah, but how many times are there 3 weeks left in the season and you're out of stuff to play for? I think that the American model is the best way to operate a sports league. And the only reason that these leagues are so popular in Europe is because it's soccer. They love soccer. It's the best soccer in the world. And it's still an entertaining product, and it does a pretty good job. And that's why it's popular. Plus, they don't really have any other major sports to compete with it. Right? The NBA has got to worry about all these other sports. March Madness cuts into times for Major League Soccer. Right? There's just so much competition. You have to do it in the best way, the most popular way, the most fun way for the fans. These are important things. Add in the fact the size of the United States, how many large cities that can support a major soccer team there are in the United States, and it makes all the sense in the world to get to 30 teams. Right? Nashville is a big enough city to support a major soccer team, a team that can win championships and fill stadiums. Miami, certainly. Orlando, definitely. Cincinnati, yes. Portland, of course. Seattle, yes. Just add on the list. St. Louis needs one. Right? There's so many cities in this country, because it is such a big country, that can support successful soccer products. And instead of relegating them and saying they're not as good, which would completely kill their fan base, because in the United States it is just about winning because there's so many other sports leagues. Right? If you're in Cincinnati and the Bengals and Reds are horrible, that leaves a window for a team to be really popular that's winning, even in the lower leagues, called FC Cincinnati. That's exactly what happened. And that window doesn't exist in Europe, but it does in the United States. So the more cities that are involved, that are always able, if they just do a couple moves, to have hope the next year to potentially make the playoffs, potentially go win a championship, it's going to allow you to really create a successful sports product. And once they get it at 30, they can stabilize it there and then slowly grow like a lot of these other sports leagues have over years. Build fan bases. Worry about attendance, TV ratings on a national level. You know what? A lot of people are hurting in that outside of football. Just worry about people caring about their MLS team enough to sell tickets, to do decent TV ratings, get it on national TV, and just slowly start to grow this thing. Because the MLS is young. It just started in the 90s. NBA's not like that. NBA's been around since the 60s, at least in the modern era. NFL, Super Bowl's been around since 68. And these are really cautious starts of these leagues because they obviously have origins dating way before that. Right? The NHL's been around for a long, long time. These leagues have a lot of time and have had a lot of time to grow. In the MLS, I love that they're leaning into this American model, this American style of doing things, because I think it's going to end up helping business. It's going to end up helping the MLS. It's going to get more cities involved, and it will improve the United States men's national team because there are more professional soccer games that will be full of people for kids to go to, for kids to be inspired by, for kids to become the next great soccer player. It increases that opportunity. I think it's only good for American soccer. I used to be against it, but the more I think about it, the more I see the way they're executing it, I am certainly for Major League Soccer operating like the other sports leagues in the United States and not like a soccer league from around the world. Because then it's also an American league, right? It feels like an American league because it's like everything else. It's not, oh yeah, this soccer league that's also here, but it operates like, you know, how they do it in Britain. It's got a different taste to it. But 30 teams, MLS Cup, a big event at the end of the year, just has all the makings of becoming popular, all the makings of being a really successful soccer product in the United States. And that's what the MLS wants, and I think that's what they'll end up getting. I'm super excited for the season to start. We'll have total breakdowns of the MLS. That'll become a large focus of our show, especially throughout the summer, because it's our soccer. It's all around us, and I really want Major League Soccer to pick up steam because these are some really cool clubs with really cool logos and really good players. And it's exciting soccer. If you judge it by amount of goals scored, it's one of the most exciting soccer leagues in the world. There's a lot of excitement in it, a lot of fun to watch. All right, we'll step aside, take a break. On the other side of the break, obviously we have more soccer. We're going to preview Bayern Munich versus Leipzig. Biggest match of the weekend. We preview that next. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
GSMC Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. Give us a follow on Twitter at GSMC_soccer. Like us on Facebook, GSMC Soccer. Big weekend in the Bundesliga. Biggest weekend probably of the year in the Bundesliga. Bayern Munich 1 point clear of RB Leipzig. Still plenty of time to go in the season, but last time that RB Leipzig, currently in second place in the league, will battle Bayern Munich this season, making it a match that could decide the championship, and most likely you'll look at the season standings at the end of it all, and it probably will have decided the championship, unless you think Bayern Munich's going to run away with it. So maybe I'm not in that camp. And it's just it's an interesting matchup. It's a matchup that I thought Bayern Munich would be 2 points down of Leipzig, maybe even 3 points down, and it'd be a match that I thought Bayern Munich would really need. A match that Bayern Munich would be desperate for, a match that if they lost, they would actually lose out on the Bundesliga. That is what I thought this match was going to be. Instead, it's the opposite way around. If Bayern Munich walks out of Sunday victorious, it's done. Wrap a bow on it. I've already said it's done, but that's more of a strong belief that it's done. But if Bayern Munich walks away with a victory against Leipzig, they'll be 4 points clear of them. All the momentum in the world, and Leipzig will have no real opportunity to make it up, and I'm not even sure I'm confident Leipzig will be able to defeat the mid-tier teams in the league consistently enough, to overtake Bayern Munich, who seems like they will roll every team that's not one of the top teams in the world for the rest of the season. So that is now the position RB Leipzig has put themselves in. And it's a really intriguing matchup. You have Timo Werner versus Robert Lewandowski, the two best strikers in the Bundesliga, two of the best strikers in the world. I think I give the edge to Lewandowski right now. He hasn't lost a touch of athleticism. He's more experienced. He's put in 10 goals in the last 10 games in the Bundesliga. It's been absolutely incredible. And to me, Bayern Munich is the team that is certainly in better form. They have won their last 4 against Hertha Berlin, Schalke 04. Remember, 4-0 victory against Berlin, 5-0 against Schalke, 3-1 against Mainz. They had an interesting Pokal match where they didn't necessarily throw all the haymakers that they won 4-3 against Hoffenheim. Another lackadaisical cup performance. We talked about Real Madrid's lackadaisical cup performance earlier. Meanwhile, Leipzig just lost 3-1 to Frankfurt in the Pokal. They drew Mönchengladbach in the Bundesliga, who they're 4th in the league, but a draw there is just not what they needed. They lost to Frankfurt in the Bundesliga, so 2 losses to Frankfurt over the last 3 matches, and Eintracht Frankfurt currently 11th in the Bundesliga. Now, Frankfurt has a 5-1 win over Bayern this year, but that was before Bayern fired their manager, Nico Kovac, an actual correct firing, and brought in a guy, Hansi Flick, who really stabilized this Bayern Munich team, a very talented Bayern Munich team. Leipzig hasn't won a match since January 18th. and just add that fact into that this match is at Allianz Arena. It's in Munich. And I just don't see a way I do see a way Bayern loses, certainly. Leipzig is talented. They've got a talented striker. Leipzig and Bayern drew earlier this year. They aren't that far apart in terms of talent, in terms of, I think Leipzig can certainly win a singular match against Bayern Munich. But I've got a strong feeling that Bayern's going to come out victorious in this. Why? They have all the momentum in the world. I would be way more nervous if Leipzig would have kept pace, been able to beat Frankfurt, been able to beat Mönchengladbach like they should have. And that would have been an extra 4 points, and they would be 3 points clear of Bayern Munich right now, which is where I thought they'd be. 3 points clear of Bayern. I'd be nervous because the momentum would not be on Bayern's side. Leipzig would have a lot of confidence. They would have the lead in the league. They could say to themselves, listen, we're better than them. We played better all year. We have more points. Those arguments are out the window. You've lost it now. Now you've lost 2 out of 3. You're out of the Pokal. You drew Mönchengladbach. You lost to Frankfurt. Bayern is hammering people left and right. 12-1 over the last 3 Bundesliga matches. They seem like they're destined to score at least 4 goals a match. That's going to put a lot of pressure to the start of the game. And if 1 goal goes in for Bayern Munich over Leipzig, Leipzig might look around at each other and just say, like the rest of Germany, well, I guess Bayern Munich's just always going to win the Bundesliga because I'm not sure what else we're supposed to do. And that's not a good position to be in as a team. And Bayern Munich having the lead going into this game is just such a momentum fastball. I'm just not sure Leipzig is going to be able to make contact with it, to continue the analogy. Because, listen, when a team has won a title 7 straight seasons, we see this effect in American sports. We see with the Patriots. Sometimes Patriots will beat teams before they even walk out of the locker room. Right? We've seen this with dominant basketball teams, with the Warriors, where you feel lost, you feel hopeless at some points. They're so good, they're so overwhelming, they've won so much that it feels almost impossible that you'll be able to make up this ground. And Bayern Munich has even more advantages than the Patriots and the Warriors in the fact that they do have more talent, have spent more money than every other team in the league. So logistically, these teams know they have a disadvantage. Talent-wise, they know they have a disadvantage. Add in that fact to the fact that Bayern Munich has won the last 7 German titles, and when they storm back after it felt like they were dead in the water to take a 1-point lead in the league, what are you supposed to say? Everybody's just got to shrug their shoulders and say, I guess this is how it is. Now, maybe Leipzig can flip that narrative. They're certainly talented enough to. They certainly could go into Allianz Arena and have an absolute shocker, and then we would have a thrilling Bundesliga race down the stretch. And the only chance to me that the Bundesliga is thrilling down the stretch is a Leipzig victory. Because Bayern right now, 3 points clear of Dortmund. They'd stay at least 3 points clear with a win this weekend. They distance themselves by 4 points from Leipzig. And Bayern just, right now, they're clicking on all cylinders. They probably aren't going to drop a mid-tier to low-tier game. It's not something that Bayern tends to do. They just have so much talent, it's overwhelming. It's hard for them to even get upset in those games. So if you're Leipzig, you lose out on this, you'll have to play perfect the rest of the way and hope Bayern slips up, and that just doesn't feel realistic. Doesn't feel like a realistic ask. But if you're Leipzig and you find a way to win, you don't necessarily secure the league whatsoever, because I think the same things will be true, but now you have a 2-point advantage. You can play with a little more confidence. You knock off Bayern's momentum, and I think we're going to have a neck-and-neck race where Dortmund could even get involved in this thing down the stretch in the Bundesliga. But I thought it was going to be a great race down the stretch, and that this match would maybe give the title to Leipzig, and it would be maybe a late run for Bayern where they fall 2 points short. But instead, the lead up to this one, Leipzig has completely blown the lead they had, completely ruined the momentum they had, and Bayern Munich is now the league leader in this match, which was a devastating outcome for Leipzig heading into this one. They needed to be league leaders on Sunday. They won't be. They'll try to become that again with a victory, but it's a tough ask when you're out of form and on the road against Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga to grab that win. But should be a lot of fun. I'm obviously picking Bayern Munich. They're the team in form at home, and they have more talent. Check, check, check. That's my pick. And Leipzig has not defeated Bayern Munich in a very long time. Last win was March 18th, 2018. That was a Bundesliga match. 2-1. Couple draws in there, but Bayern's pretty much had Leipzig's number. So I'm picking Bayern Munich this weekend, which should, to me, it'd move them in 538 to over 90% to win the Bundesliga. In my eyes, it'd push it to about 98%. So huge match for all of Germany against Bayern. All of Germany is probably cheering for Leipzig to get that victory. 7 straight titles for one team will make a country pretty tired of you, especially when they were tired of you before you won those 7 titles. It's like if the Yankees won the next 6 World Series. Woo, people would not be happy. Not be happy whatsoever. I was pretty happy watching the highlights of one man. His name, Gio Reyna, future United States men's national team star, ? He got a goal for Borussia Dortmund over the week. We'll talk about that goal and talk about his potential future in the United States men's national team on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
GSMC Soccer Podcast, final segment of the show. It's been a fun one. Gio Reyna, we've talked about him getting minutes for Borussia Dortmund on the senior team. I liked his talent. He's following the exact same path as the player now at Chelsea, Christian Pulisic. And he scored a goal. And it was a beauty of a goal. He showed some brilliant control, brilliant shooting touch. Awfully fun to watch. Makes you excited about the future of him and the future of Gio Reyna in the Bundesliga, and obviously for the United States men's national team. So Gio Reyna, born in the United Kingdom in Sunderland, scored 1 goal in the DFB Cup. He's now has 1 goal in his career. Giovanni Reyna. Obviously, he's an American because he plays for the United States men's national team. His transfer market profile right now currently does not have a value listed. You need to be playing some matches to have a value listed. But he is a first-tier player. He's a guy that I think is going to get a lot of minutes. He's a guy that, to me, will be a star at Dortmund just like Pulisic was. He has that type of touch. You see that ability in short little moments. And the fact that the United States is going to have an opportunity to have him instead of Portugal, which was his other option, is exciting. He's only 18 years old. Well, he's only 17 years old, turning 18. He's born in 2002, people. That's pretty terrifying. Born in 2002. And his performances for the United States youth teams have been really exciting. 7 goals with the U17s in 14 matches. That's pretty solid. He has not yet played for the U23s, but he'll be a big part of a potential Olympic team if the United States can qualify for it. It's a guy to watch. He's a guy that's exciting to watch, a guy to pay attention to. To me, he's this exact type of player will continue to happen. At the best clubs in the world, Americans will continue to make noise, continue to fly up the system, because there's more Americans trying this soccer thing. There's more Americans that are interested in it, and there's more international players that are interested in playing for the United States because the country does seem to care. Although they did not make the World Cup the last time, go look at the television ratings from 2014 and 2010, and go look at the television ratings from the Women's World Cup, and you see that there is popularity here. And if you're going to be a world star, if you're going to be an athletic star, there's no better country to do it than the United States. Period. endorsement deals, shoe deals, merchandising, fan base, how large it is. If you're going to be a star, being a star in the United States is awfully beneficial. And that is just continuing to push players like Gio Reyna right in the grasp of the United States men's national team. Seriously, go watch the goal. He touches right, touches left, ball sticks to his foot like there's glue on it, and then delivers a beauty of a curler right around the keeper into the back of the net. Brilliant to watch. I really recommend you go watch it. Super impressive from Gio Reyna. Super exciting for the United States men's national team. They've got a couple more matches in a month or so. Friendly season, then we'll get into Olympic qualifying, and then September, the World Cup qualifying kicks off. It's a big time for the world of soccer. It really rolls into it as we move through the year of 2020, especially for the United States. It's a big time for a turnaround. And players like Gio Reyna, players like Weston McKennie, players like Christian Pulisic, the list goes on and on and on, are certainly big impacts for the United States men's national team, and it was exciting to see him produce a goal this past weekend. That's going to do it for the show today. Give us a follow on Twitter at GSMC_soccer. On Facebook, GSMC Soccer. Give it a like. We'd love for you to like, rate, subscribe, all those beautiful things. Leave a review on your favorite podcasting platform for GSMC Soccer Podcast. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the big Bundesliga match on Sunday. It's on Fox Sports, and it's massive. It's a massive Bundesliga match, and it's something that I sure hope you're able to check out. I think it's the biggest match over the weekend. I'm Lukas Moore. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the GSMC Soccer Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.